There's plenty of lies and misinformation in coronavirus, so Truth Lies Shenanigans brings you the truth. Stories directly from the people that lived it, frontline workers and survivors. This is the COVID Chronicles.
Yes.
Hi, today our
Lauren.
guest
Welcome,
is
Lauren.
Lauren Novack,
Hi, guys.
who is a
Welcome,
COVID
Lauren.
survivor, but has had a very difficult time dealing with the long haul symptoms. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, because honestly, I don't think people know about what's going on. It's not really being talked about in the media at all. And there's a lot of people in my shoes. I'm not at all a outlier in this. So it's an important conversation, I think, to have.
Well, thank you for being here. Now, first off, I simply want to ask, how are you feeling today?
I'm okay today. I think the thing that's really hard about the long haul stuff is that it's very episodic. It's like an episodic disability. And the thing that's hardest for me is what's called post-exertional malaise, which is something that you might be familiar with if you're familiar with anybody who has ME/CFS or chronic fatigue syndrome, where you kind of don't know how much is too much until after the fact. Like, you feel fine, and then you end up, laid up in bed for days with hosts of your old symptoms. So I think that's the most frustrating part of it, because you can't predict when that's going to happen, and it makes living your life and going to work and maintaining your relationships quite challenging.
Yeah. So can you give us a little background on yourself, your family, what you do?
Yeah, of course. I am a behavior consultant at Behavior Vets NYC in New York City. So I work with behaviorally challenged dogs. Our
okay.
veterinarians are like psychiatrists, and our behavior consultants, me being one of them, are like the hands-on therapists that like do the hands-on stuff with the animals. So that's what I do, and I'm also in grad school. Going back to grad school, I had to take medical leave because of the COVID stuff, and I'm getting my master's degree in applied behavior analysis, so I had to do 360 hours of hands-on work with kids on the spectrum, and that's actually how I got COVID. So the first week of November, I was working with my family. They were the only people I was really seeing, because in my dog work, we had gone completely virtually, but you can't work with a autistic child through a screen. That's very, very difficult, especially if the child is nonverbal. Some of them you can, some of them you can't. The child I was working with was not going to happen. And it was the first week of November, and the nanny came in with allergies. Everybody got sick. All three kids tested positive, even though none of them were symptomatic. The parents got sick. Most of, regular 2-week go for them, but for me, I just passed the 9-month mark. So
you just passed 9 months.
Yeah.
9 months,
Yeah,
and you're still dealing.
9.
So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
can you describe in a little more detail what you've been dealing with since?
Yeah, the first 2 weeks were, I have to say, nothing like I've ever experienced before. I had the flu once when I was 15, and it was not like that. I live in Manhattan. I'm in a 700 square foot apartment. I can basically see my toilet from my bed, and walking from the bed to the bathroom, like, my muscles would be on fire, as if I was like doing too many squats at the gym. I passed out on day 4 and went to the hospital. In the shower, just passed out. They didn't admit me. So, I was considered, it sucked. It was a terrible 2 weeks, but I was considered a, mild case. This wasn't a severe illness. They don't really consider you severe unless you're admitted and like in the ICU, needing like really intense supportive care. So what happened really is, like, on week 3, once I was out of the quarantine period, I went back to work, but I just didn't really have the stamina. I was really tired. I just like really couldn't do it, really out of breath easily. And I was sleeping all the time. And I actually called at the end of week 3. I was like, this doesn't seem normal. And I had heard about the long hauler stuff, because my mom she's really good about keeping up to date on everything. And I called here in New York, Mount Sinai started a long haul clinic. And I called them and I said, what do you consider a long hauler? like week 3, you know, like you're getting over a big virus. I don't expect to feel 100%, but this feels like more than that.
Right.
And they were like, well, and this was at the end of November, and they said, well, our first opening is in February.
Wow.
Oh,
And I said, okay, I'll just make an appointment and hopefully I can cancel it. Like, let's just get on the books just in case, since there's a 3-month wait. And unfortunately, I needed that appointment. I didn't see a pulmonologist until April because that's how backlogged everybody is. So, and I was,
because in New York they
especially
were
in New
like,
York.
what, 1,000?
We got
Yeah.
slammed.
What was it, like 1,000
We
a
got-
day that were dying in New York?
Yeah.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really bad, you know, I feel very lucky because I was in the second wave. And by then we had tests, like I have a confirmed positive test. I know I had it. And at Mount Sinai, they weren't taking long haulers who from the first wave because they didn't have confirmed positives. And there were so many people in need of care that I think they had to like filter somehow. But there were these people suffering from March of 2020 who still hadn't gotten an appointment by the time I was seen in February of 2021.
Wow.
So my diagnoses include vagal neuropathy. So your vagus nerve, just neuropathy of the vagus nerve, which is also
the vagus nerve.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Your vagus nerve controls pretty much like everything, like your
Okay.
breathing, your heart rate, all of that sort of stuff.
Gotcha. All right.
Respiratory, like reactive airway disease, which is pretty mild in terms of like lung stuff. I'm on an inhaler. That's okay. I just finished 8 months of respiratory rehab. And POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
Mhm.
So I'm in cardiac rehab right now, and also MECFS, the chronic fatigue syndrome.
Wow.
So it's just like a mishmash of all of these things that I'm sure they will have like different labels for, you know, eventually once there's more and in time, there's probably going to be like, you know, chronic COVID
new
type
illnesses that we've never.
type C. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I have all of these like labels for stuff. And mostly so far, it's a lot of different kinds of therapies and rehabs to get sort of back to where you were. And I have to say that I can do more now. Like it takes more for me to crash. But cardiac rehab causes me to crash. The first time they increased me at cardiac rehab, I had symptoms for a month. I was in a wedding 2 weeks ago, and I paced myself as much as I could. I mean, I said yes to this wedding before any of us in the United States even knew what COVID was, right? Like this wedding was postponed. But it finally happened, which was really exciting. And it was a very safe wedding because every single person at the wedding was vaccinated.
Mhm.
So I went. And I drank like 5 liters of water. I didn't drink any alcohol. I sat down whenever I could sit down. You know, I didn't talk to people in the morning. I stayed in my room. I did my breathing exercises. I didn't dance. I did everything I could possibly do. And I woke up the next day with new symptoms that I had never had.
Wow.
And Monday I slept for 18 hours. Then Tuesday I slept for 16 hours. Like it was like a new personal record, which at this point was very frustrating. Like I'm at month 9 and it should only be better, right? Like I shouldn't be having new symptoms. I shouldn't have a new like personal record for sleeping.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a journey and it's not over.
So let me ask.
I'm also not.
I'm sorry. Is this because are you feeling this way? Do they know that it's because COVID ravaged your lungs specifically, or did it attack other parts of your body, other parts of your immune system?
Excellent question. So I do not have any permanent organ damage. So that's the big thumbs up, right? So when people are referring to long haulers,
so it attacks your immune
those
system.
aren't typically people who like had lung damage or heart damage, although of course there are people who have that, and that's absolutely awful. I'm very lucky I don't have that.
Okay.
They're still trying to understand the biological mechanism of action for like what is going on.
Okay.
And we know it's an inflammatory response. We know there's some sort of immune dysfunction.
Okay.
There's some new research coming out sort of showing where where those things are and some new blood tests that you can do, but we're at the very nascent stages of understanding what's sort of going on here.
Yeah.
And so the thought process so far has been very much like really, really stupid slow rehabilitation and sort of teaching your body how to cope under these new conditions to hopefully get back to where you used to be. And I just don't think we have enough information at this point to say exactly what it is. There's lots of great theories. I'm sure they're probably all right? And again, back to the chronic COVID type A, type B, type C. That's what I think we're going to see in the future.
Okay.
And hopefully some really good drugs to clean up the immune system or get it working again or what have you.
Are you vaccinated
right
currently?
now? Yes. Okay. Yes, sir. I'm vaccinated and I'm like thinking about going into the pharmacy and begging for round 3 because they just approved it for people who are severely immunocompromised. And I know long haulers are considered like mildly immunocompromised. And I want to be like, no, you have enough for me. Can I have the third one? You know?
Yeah.
So Johnny, do you have a question? Johnny Storm?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you personally dealt with any like mental health symptoms or any mental health situations. I'm sure you have, but how have you gotten through that? If you
that's a really good. That's a really good question. You know, there's a really lovely support group by Body Politic. There's a whole Slack channel, and there's even one of the pages on that Slack channel is a mental health resource page because it really is rough. For me, I cannot even describe what the fatigue is like with this. And part of the silver lining of the fatigue being so bad is not having enough energy to be anxious and not having enough energy to be sad. I mean, especially in the beginning, I was really, really, really sick. I couldn't even watch Netflix. Like when I was awake, it was enough to stare at the ceiling. I wasn't bored and I wasn't anxious. And you know, if you know me, like I'm on antidepressants. I definitely am a go. You know, I'm your typical type A plus New Yorker who like is go. And you know, we have an anxiety. Definitely one of those people. I have never been less anxious in my life because I'm like too tired to be anxious, which is I've actually learned from this. That's sort of been the silver lining. My struggles mentally have been with expecting to be at a certain place in recovery at a certain time and not getting there. So my expectation of cardiac rehab was that I would be pretty much done by now. And I had to take a leave of absence from school, which you can only do for 2 semesters. All I have left is my thesis, but at the beginning of this, my brain was so bad. I definitely fell into the category of someone who I joked and called it like COVID dementia because I like would forget words. I couldn't put a sentence together. I couldn't understand an email.
I've heard that a lot from people.
My colleagues, they would like call me and be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Your email doesn't make any sense." And that's
I've heard that a lot from people who've had COVID.
It's
the brain
really,
fog.
really tough. The brain fog is it's so bad. I couldn't. Here's a good example. I couldn't navigate the vaccine website. I had to have my friend like literally like on the phone with me and be like, point here, click here. Like I couldn't like process new information. But in terms of mental health struggles,
almost every COVID person that I've spoken to said there's just some weird brain fog.
Which that's really a challenge because, you know, if my body isn't there yet, we're all working from home. As long as I can sit in front of my computer and be productive and get some stuff done and contribute to the world and contribute, you know, to my teammates and to work and all of that, like I can deal.
Yes.
Not being able to do that at 33 is really scary. And I think in terms of mental health, like I just passed month 9. And my expectations from cardiac rehab was by the end of the summer, I'm going to be like back to full time at work. I'll go back to school. Like I'm going to be there. Because they said to me, they're like, listen, the people who get through this faster are the ones who listen to us. They do their rehab outside of, I go Mondays and Wednesdays, and you got to go to the gym, and I'm on my recumbent bike, and I do it. Like, and I even told them, I'm like, if you say 5 times a day, tell me I'm not 5 times a day, 5 times a week. Tell me what the maximum is. Because if you say 5 times a week, I'll go 10 times.
Do whatever it
and
takes.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I'm not there yet. And that's been really, really hard. I actually have to take a leave of absence from work now because I keep crushing so hard in rehab and from attempting to do life stuff. I haven't even announced this at work yet. I mean, management knows, but my colleagues don't.
Yeah.
I'm just at a point where, listen, work has been, I'm so lucky in that work has been so accommodating for me, and
that's rare.
They've switched me from being like client centered to really project based. So I've been able to like work as I can. I just feel so bad because I do have clients. I cancel on them all the time. I have to reschedule on them all the time because I can't predict when I'm going to crash and when I'm not going to crash. And, now they're saying I have another 7 cardiac rehab. And I'm like, I can't just keep canceling on people like that. And you're also only allowed to take 2 semesters off from school. So I have to go back. I have to go back and do thesis now.
Is that the school policy, or is that like a national policy, or just the school policy?
No, that's school policy, and I think
they should adjust that.
Yeah, they should make an exception.
They probably could. I honestly don't have the energy to like. I legitimately don't have the energy to like go through the channels and fight it. I just like
fight it, right?
Right. So I'm gonna take a leave from work and try to finish school. And we should talk about bureaucracy because cardiac rehab, not covered by insurance. Like when
that was going to be one of my questions.
That's horrible.
What?
That was going to be one of my questions.
It's for POTS and dysautonomia, which are not new diagnoses, but because it's related to COVID, no insurance company will cover it. Like basically when I signed up for it, and it's, I had to go to 2 cardiologists to get like specially admitted into the program. It's through Mount Sinai. Like this isn't some off the wall hole, I'm not going to some crazy experimental thing. This is like evidence-based rehab. And they were like, just so you know, insurance doesn't cover this. And I'm like, you mean my insurance? And they're like, no, we're not even submitting it to any insurance because insurance just denies. So I hope you can afford it and save your receipts.
That's horrible.
And if I wasn't married, if I didn't have a husband who could like support me through all of this, I don't know what I would do. I'm in a very, very privileged position. Like I don't know what people are doing if they're not as lucky as I am with that support system.
Yeah.
And these are things I think that people need to hear. The people who are so frivolous or who think that, it's not a big deal. It affects so many different aspects of your life. Even if you get it, but you survive, or if you get it and you didn't die, because that's the thing. Like everyone thinks, okay, COVID, death. COVID. No, there is a huge in between.
Yeah.
There's a huge middle ground that a lot of folks don't talk about. And so I wanted, before Neo even gets to the audience questions, I wanted to ask you about what is rehab? Like, what are you doing in rehab?
Let me just get one comment in before. I just want to read Karen Andrew Thompson. She said, I talked with a friend this past weekend who had COVID, and he talks about the brain fog.
Brain fog.
He says the only docs that understand are the hospital doctors and nurses, but not his primary care doctors.
Wow. Or probably not even his family, the people around him.
Yeah.
They don't understand that either.
I got to say, I'm going to admit to something, because one of my, I'm not going to say who, but one of the people that I said they had COVID and started having brain fog and was acting weird, I thought that they were just acting weird, like, oh, that's just my COVID brain fog. And then I started to realize, I thought they were just playing around, because the way they were acting, like, I just can't think that through, I can't think it through. And then as I kept hearing more and more people saying that they had this brain fog, I'm like, now I get it. And so now when I'm seeing this person still having the brain fog, I'm like, I get it.
Understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's knowledge is important. But go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. Thank you, Lauren.
Lizzie's question.
I know. I think that's an important thing to bring up too. And when you talk about primary care physicians, again, I'm in the second wave, so I had the benefit of not being those first wave sufferers who were going to their doctors and being like, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z, and being told, oh, you have anxiety, go take a Xanax. Right? Which is what everybody experienced in the first wave. And we didn't really know that this was a thing yet. And so I think that's why the support groups were formed. But to talk about rehab and Lizzie's question, like, what does this all look like? I think I'm really fortunate because I don't even have to deal with my primary care physician. Like, I'm in the Mount Sinai, like, long COVID system.
Which is great.
And even within that system, my biggest sort of wins have been the doctors outside of that system. So even within the system of, like, this is the long COVID center, they also still don't know what they're doing, but they will listen to you and they'll try things, and, you know, they're learning as they go. So my first therapy that I did was speech therapy, because what happens with vagal neuropathy is that your vocal cords close. It's part of, and it's one of the reasons you weren't getting oxygen. My oxygen was in the low 80s for like 6 months. And part of the reason is because upon any exertion, your vocal cords just like clamp shut. And so that was actually really fast rehab. I have to say, like 3-4 weeks, and I was feeling so much better. You just kind of retrain your vocal cords to open up. The other thing that I'm just finishing up now, which is like a 7 or 8 month program, is reteaching your body correct breathing patterns. So there's, if anybody wants to look it up, you don't even have to go anywhere for this. The doctors at Mount Sinai actually worked with an existing group called Stasis. So if you look up Stasis Performance, you can sign up for a free class to teach you proper breathing patterns. And then they have literally months and months and months and months of exercises. So the exercises are different every day, but it's focused on teaching you how to breathe and then eventually increasing your diaphragmatic and lung capacity, to speak. Stasis. Yeah, I think it's stasisperformance.com. Let me look.
Yeah, very easy to find. I went to Stasis Performance right away, and there was a nice pop-up. The app is coming soon.
Yeah, but they're great. So if anybody had COVID, is having trouble with breathing, that's something that anybody can just go on and start that process themselves. And I actually think it's been a really good and really helpful grounding program to do, because you start and it's maybe 30 minutes a day. Like, you start 10 minutes 3 times a day. And the breathing work I do now, it takes 2 hours.
Whoa.
So you really, I spend all my day doing rehab exercises, honestly.
Wow.
And then cardiac rehab for the dysautonomia, for me, it's all recumbent, because what happens when I stand up is my heart rate skyrockets. And I also have tachycardia randomly. So, I could be sitting here and my heart rate could just skyrocket by 50 beats per minute for no reason. So you start with everything recumbent, because the issue is that your body's having trouble pumping the blood back up to your heart, lungs, and brain. And that results in a lot of dizziness, sometimes fainting. Certainly, I don't think it helps with the brain fog if you're like blood flow. Your brain is not
Right. On top of that,
So it's mostly work recumbent strength work. And I started with 15 minutes on a recumbent bike. I'm 11 weeks in and I'm up to 20 minutes.
Wow.
So that's how slow it is. And it's not that it's do. It's not that I'm like on the bike and I'm panting and I'm like, feel like my muscles my legs are going to fall off because I'm working so hard. It's that, when they pushed me from the first time from 15 minutes to 18 minutes, I was symptomatic for a month. So it's not that it's so hard to do, it's that it's the after effect. And it's so when you're in cardiac rehab,
because your immune system's still responding.
It's still responding. And
Reacting.
what we think is happening, or what the researchers think is happening, is that like whatever's happening in the immune system is happening in the endothelium, which is the lining of your blood vessels. So once you get things growing, things get sort of kicked up. That's one of the current hypotheses. But that's the thing that's so difficult about the post-exertional malaise, and why I think the best term of explaining long haul symptoms is that it's an episodic disability. Is I could be here talking to you today and I could be fine. I got up really early this morning and I had a 4-hour training session in the park with a dog. I can already hear my throat going. I don't know if I'm going to be okay tomorrow. I don't know if this was too much. And so in the beginning, when you're learning how to pace, and it's like, okay, I can be on the computer for 30 minutes and then I have to lie down for 20 minutes. Like, you learn what you can do and what isn't enough. But at a certain point, you have to start sort of living your life a little bit more. And it can be really hard to quantify what is too much until it's too late. And so that's the journey. And I think, you know, tying the mental health stuff back into it, not all my friends get it.
I bet.
Not everybody that I know gets it. Like, very, very close friends get it because they're lovely and they're there for me. But, you know, my friends that I like see to have fun with or whatnot, you know, I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, yeah, I saw my cardiologist today and they want me to go on disability. And he looked at me and he's like, really? I'm like, is that an appropriate response to me saying, really? Like
you're crazy or something.
But, you know,
they don't understand.
It's one of those, you know, I don't want to say silent, one of those invisible illnesses, right? I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not hobbling around on a cast. Like, I look fine.
Right.
So,
and you look healthy. You look healthy.
Yeah. I look so much better than I used to. And frankly, I sometimes question if I'm insane. Like, when I have bad days and good days, I feel like my body is gaslighting me. Because I have days where I got this. I could totally do thesis. Why am I going to take time off of work? I could totally do it all. I absolutely can't. If I tried to do that, I'd be back in bed for 18 hours. But
let's get a
like,
question.
You feel like that sometimes. Yeah. Questions. I'm going to stop talking.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Let me get a question in from Rob B. before we run out of time.
Yeah, just thank you for sharing all of these details about your journey. And I guess my question is, with all of these symptoms and effects, how has your family role changed since everything started?
That's a really tough one. And that's tough because when you're in a partnership, it's really supposed to be give and take. And right now, I really feel like it's all take. And I'll be honest, there are times that I do things and I know I'm going to crash afterwards. But I'm just like, if I don't do this, like, it's just not like, you know, I have to do this for my husband. I have to support him in this way, especially, you know, my husband has an air conditioning business. It's been a brutal summer. He, you know, of course, all of us humans, like, I'm not the only person going through stuff. He's going through stuff too. And, you know, we're actually in the middle of a bathroom renovation that was supposed to be done, and we're living without a bathroom right now. So yeah, I push myself sometimes because I want to support my husband and I love him, and he's been wonderful. And have we had talks about it? Yeah, I was terrified that he was gonna resent me, and you know, I'm like having a really hard time with all of this. And I think he sees how hard I'm working on this. Like, he sees how hard I'm working to try to get better, and he also sees I physically can't get out of bed for 18 hours.
Wow.
You know, he knows that it's not.
Sees it all.
It's not like, I'm not like making this up, and he knows me very well. Like, he knows that I'm not the kind of person who's just like gonna milk it. I want to be out there doing stuff. I want to be, you know, walking the dog. I want to be, you know, I want to be doing all of these things. And that's sort of one of the things I said to him when I was like, you know, I really think I have to take time off of work because first of all, there's no way if I don't, there's no way I'm going to be able to be a partner in any aspect. Right.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm lucky because he's so supportive, but that does work
challenge
against you for mental health struggle because, you know, you want to be a part of a relationship, not just like a little leech that's like, support me, thank you, you know?
That's a tough feeling to deal with. We're running out of time, unfortunately. I just want to get to some of these comments online because we have there's a bunch of questions as well. So I'll get to the comments first. Daria Winter says, the body is fascinating in the way it functions. I wholeheartedly agree. The body is magnificent creation, absolutely fascinating. Jose says, COVID scares the shit out of me. Totally different lifestyle, a complete overhaul. Olivia says, this story is why I'm so frustrated with the government or regular people that talk about the death numbers. Death numbers are not the only thing. Let's talk about people living with COVID. Those are the true numbers that continually, Mike Winter also says,
it's actually, I think this is a statistic. About 20% of people who get COVID will end up as long haulers.
20%, wow.
And I've been waiting for this research to come out, obviously, for 9 months. And we finally now know, unfortunately, that the vaccine doesn't do anything to protect you against becoming a long hauler.
Right.
So, you don't want to die. It does an excellent job of protecting against very severe illness and death. But it doesn't, unfortunately, do anything to protect against long COVID.
And I think that's been one of my biggest frustrations is that the conversation is always about, or often about, who has COVID and who died from COVID, right? And not what's been going on in between. And I think this is an important conversation to hear. Like, okay, yeah, you can get it and you can survive, but how well are you living after surviving? Like, what are the long-term effects? And it pains me to sit here and hear you talk about what's been going on. And have they given you a timeline of when this could possibly be over?
My cardiologist said that on average, it's taking long haulers about 9 months to get through cardiac rehab. And you probably won't be 100%, but you'll be much more functional. So I don't know that there's a timeline to like you're yourself again. I don't know that that exists. And I think it also probably differs from person to person. I'm sure there are people who, 6 months after are totally fine. And there's people who, got COVID in March of 2020 who are long haulers who are still suffering. So it really varies. But there's no guarantee. I think it would be easier if there was a guarantee, right? Like if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and you're like, okay, this sucks, but it'll be 15 months and I'll be fine. That's a little easier to deal with. It's the uncertainty of like, when am I going to be myself again? When can I live my normal life again? That's really a challenge.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I'd like to ask you if you could just take a minute to say any final words to anyone. Also, if you want to acknowledge anyone, you can take the time to do that.
I just want to say everybody get vaccinated, wear your masks, look at, your risk versus the benefit of what you're doing. And I'd actually like to give a shout out to an epidemiologist who I think is doing a really wonderful job following all of the up-to-date research. If you go to yourlocalepidemiologist.com, she does a fabulous job. She sends emails, or the newsletter that you can follow, or you can check her out online, really dissecting the latest research, everything COVID related, so that you can make good risk assessment decisions for yourself and your family. And I just think she's doing excellent work, and everybody should follow her.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining the podcast and telling your story.
Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. And we're going to check in with you. We're going to definitely have Lizzie check in with you and see how you're doing.
Yes.
Keep up with you.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Happy last show.
Thank you so much,
so
Lauren.
much for joining. Happy last show.
Bye.
Thank you again. All right.